Welcome, dear listener. Due to the nature of this content, we want to start this audiobook with a parental advisory. This audiobook contains a reading and in-depth analysis of the Juniper Tree, a fairy tale by the Brothers Grimm. Unlike many fairy tales that offer whimsical adventures and happy endings, the Juniper Tree delves into mature and often disturbing themes. The story includes elements of child abuse, murder, cannibalism, and profound biblical symbolism. These themes are explored in a context that is more suitable for an adult audience, offering a complex narrative that engages with darker aspects of human nature and morality. The Brothers Grimm, Jacob, and Wilhelm Grimm, are synonymous with the world of folklore and fairy tales. Born in the late 18th century, these German scholars and philologists are best known for their extensive collection of folklore, fairy tales, and myths, which they meticulously compiled and published in the early 19th century. Their work has had a profound impact on literature, culture, and the collective imagination, preserving the rich oral traditions of Germanic folklore for future generations. One of the darker and more mature tales in their collection is the Juniper Tree. Originally published in Low German in 1812 as part of their anthology Grimm's Fairy Tales, Kinder- and Hausmärchen. This story delves into themes that are far from the lighthearted and whimsical narratives often associated with fairy tales. Instead, the Juniper Tree explores profound and unsettling subjects such as child abuse, murder, cannibalism, and deeply embedded biblical symbolism. The story opens with a wealthy and devout couple who long desperately for a child. Their fervent prayers are seemingly answered under the shadow of a juniper tree, a plant laden with ancient and multifaceted symbolism. As the tale unfolds, the wife's wish for a child and her subsequent death set the stage for a narrative steeped in both Christian allegory and pagan imagery. The Juniper Tree is not just a tale of family and misfortune. It is a story that weaves together elements of divine justice, supernatural transformation, and the eternal struggle between good and evil. The narrative invites readers to explore the complex interplay of these themes through its vivid and often harrowing events. In this audiobook, we will journey through the rich tapestry of the Juniper Tree, starting with a full narration of the tale, followed by an extensive analysis. Our exploration will delve into the historical and cultural context of the story, dissect its characters, and uncover the layers of symbolism that make this tale a profound piece of folklore. As we dissect the narrative, we will also consider the psychological and moral dimensions of the story, drawing connections to broader themes in literature and human experience. Prepare to be immersed in a story that is as haunting as it is enlightening. as we unravel the many threads of the juniper tree. So, if you are ready, please make yourself comfortable. Close your eyes, relax, and let us take you on a journey into the world of the juniper tree, a tale filled with mystery, symbolism, and profound insights. Let's begin. Long, long ago, some 2,000 years or so, there lived a rich man with a good and beautiful wife. They loved each other dearly, but sorrowed much that they had no children. So greatly did they desire to have one, that the wife prayed for it day and night, but still they remained childless. In front of the house there was a court in which grew a juniper tree. One winter's day, the wife stood under the tree to peel some apples, and as she was peeling them, she cut her finger, and the blood fell on the snow. "Ah," sighed the woman heavily, "if I had but a child, as red as blood and as white as snow." And as she spoke the words, her heart grew light within her, and it seemed to her that her wish was granted. And she returned to the house, feeling glad and comforted. A month passed, and the snow had all disappeared. Then another month went by, and all the earth was green. So the months followed one another, and first the trees budded in the woods, and soon the green branches grew thickly intertwined, and then the blossoms began to fall. Once again, the wife stood under the juniper tree, and it was so full of sweet scent that her heart leaped for joy, and she was so overcome with her happiness that she fell on her knees. Presently, the fruit became round and firm, and she was glad and at peace. But when they were fully ripe, she picked the berries and ate eagerly of them, and then she grew sad and ill. A little while later, she called her husband and said to him, weeping, "If I die, bury me under the juniper tree." Then she felt comforted and happy again, and before another month had passed, she had a little child, and when she saw that it was as white as snow and as red as blood, her joy was so great that she died. Her husband buried her under the juniper tree and wept bitterly for her. By degrees, however, his sorrow grew less, and although at times he still grieved over his loss, he was able to go about as usual, and later on he married again. He now had a little daughter born to him. The child of his first wife was a boy who was as red as blood and as white as snow. The mother loved her daughter very much, and when she looked at her and then looked at the boy, it pierced her heart to think that he would always stand in the way of her own child, and she was continually thinking how she could get the whole of the property for her. This evil thought took possession of her more and more, and made her behave very unkindly to the boy. She drove him from place to place with cuffings and buffetings, so that the poor child went about in fear and had no peace from the time he left school to the time he went back. One day, the little daughter came running to her mother in the storeroom and said, "Mother, give me an apple." "Yes, my child," said the wife, and she gave her a beautiful apple out of the chest. The chest had a very heavy lid and a large iron lock. "Mother," said the little daughter again, "may not brother have one too?" The mother was angry at this, but she answered, "Yes, when he comes out of school." Just then, she looked out of the window and saw him coming, and it seemed as if an evil spirit entered into her, for she snatched the apple out of her little daughter's hand and said, "You shall not have one before your brother." She threw the apple into the chest and shut it to. The little boy now came in, and the evil spirit in the wife made her say kindly to him, "My son, will you have an apple?" But she gave him a wicked look. "Mother," said the boy, "how dreadful you look. Yes, give me an apple." The thought came to her that she would kill him. "Come with me," she said, and she lifted up the lid of the chest. "Take one out for yourself." And as he bent over to do so, the evil spirit urged her, and crash, down went the lid, and off went the little boy's head. Then she was overwhelmed with fear at the thought of what she had done. "If only I can prevent anyone knowing that I did it," she thought. So she went upstairs to her room and took a white handkerchief out of her top drawer. Then she set the boy's head again on his shoulders and bound it with the handkerchief so that nothing could be seen, and placed him on a chair by the door with an apple in his hand. Soon after this, little Marlene came up to her mother, who was stirring a pot of boiling water over the fire, and said, "Mother, brother is sitting by the door with an apple in his hand, and he looks so pale. And when I asked him to give me the apple, he did not answer, and that frightened me." "Go to him again," said her mother, "and if he does not answer, give him a box on the ear." So little Marlene went and said, "Brother, give me that apple." But he did not say a word. Then she gave him a box on the ear, and his head rolled off. She was so terrified at this that she ran crying and screaming to her mother. "Oh," she said, "I have knocked off brother's head." And then she wept and wept, and nothing would stop her. "What have you done?" said her mother. "But no one must know about it, so you must keep silence. What is done can't be undone. We will make him into puddings." And she took the little boy and cut him up, made him into puddings, and put him in the pot. But Marlene stood looking on, and wept and wept, and her tears fell into the pot, so that there was no need of salt. Presently, the father came home and sat down to his dinner. He asked, "Where is my son?" The mother said nothing, but gave him a large dish of black pudding, and Marlene still wept without ceasing. The father again asked, "Where is my son?" "Oh," answered the wife, "he has gone into the country to his mother's great uncle, he's going to stay there some time. What has he gone there for? And he never even said goodbye to me. Well, he likes being there, and he told me he should be away quite 6 weeks. He is well looked after there. I feel very unhappy about it, said the husband, in case it should not be all right, and he ought to have said goodbye to me. With this, he went on with his dinner and said, "Little Marlene, why do you weep? Brother will soon be back." Then he asked his wife for more pudding, and as he ate, he threw the bones under the table. Little Marlene went upstairs and took her best silk handkerchief out of her bottom drawer, and in it she wrapped all the bones from under the table and carried them outside. And all the time she did nothing but weep. Then she laid them in the green grass under the juniper tree, and she had no sooner done so than all her sadness seemed to leave her, and she wept no more. And now the juniper tree began to move, and the branches waved backwards and forwards, first away from one another, and then together again, as it might be someone clapping their hands for joy. After this, a mist came round the tree, and in the midst of it, there was a burning as of fire. And out of the fire there flew a beautiful bird that rose high into the air, singing magnificently. And when it could no more be seen, the juniper tree stood there as before, and the silk handkerchief and the bones were gone. Little Marlene now felt as light-hearted and happy as if her brother were still alive, and she went back to the house and sat down cheerfully to the table and ate. The bird flew away and alighted on the house of a goldsmith and began to sing. My mother killed her little son. My father grieved when I was gone. My sister loved me best of all. She laid her kerchief over me and took my bones that they might lie underneath the juniper tree. Kiewit, Kiewit, what a beautiful bird am I. The goldsmith was in his workshop making a gold chain when he heard the song of the bird on his roof. He thought it so beautiful that he got up and ran out, and as he crossed the threshold, he lost one of his slippers. But he ran on into the middle of the street with a slipper on one foot and a sock on the other. He still had on his apron and still held the gold chain and the pincers in his hands. And so he stood gazing up at the bird while the sun came shining brightly down on the street. "Bird," he said, "how beautifully you sing. Sing me that song again." "Nay," said the bird, "I do not sing twice for nothing. Give that gold chain, and I will sing it you again." "Here is the chain. Take it," said the goldsmith. "Only sing me that again." The bird flew down and took the gold chain in his right claw, and then he alighted again in front of the goldsmith and sang, "My mother killed her little son. My My father grieved when I was gone. My sister loved me best of all. She laid her kerchief over me and took my bones that they might lie underneath the juniper tree. Kaiwit, Kaiwit, what a beautiful bird am I. Then he flew away and settled on the roof of a shoemaker's house and sang, "My mother killed her little son. My father grieved when I was gone. My sister loved me best of all. She laid her kerchief over me and took my bones that they might lie underneath the juniper tree. Kaiwit, Kaiwit, what a beautiful bird am I." The shoemaker heard him, and he jumped up and ran out in his shirt sleeves and stood looking up at the bird on the roof with his hand over his eyes to keep himself from being blinded by the sun. "Bird," he said, "how beautifully you sing." Then he called through the door to his wife, "Wife, come out. Here's a bird. Come and look at it and hear how beautifully it sings." Then he called his daughter and the children, then the apprentices, girls and boys, and they all ran up the street to look at the bird and saw how splendid it was with its red and green feathers and its neck like burnished gold and eyes like two bright stars in its head. "Bird," said the shoemaker, "sing me that song again." "Nay," answered the bird, "I do not sing twice for nothing. You must give me something." "Wife," said the man, "go into the garret. On the upper shelf, you will see a pair of red shoes. Bring them to me." The wife went in and fetched the shoes. "There, bird," said the shoemaker, "now sing me that song again." The bird flew down and took the red shoes in his left claw, and then he went back to the roof and sang, "My mother killed her little son. My father grieved when I was gone. My sister loved me best of all. She laid her kerchief over me and took my bones that they might lie underneath the juniper tree. Kaiwit, Kaiwit, what a beautiful bird am I." When he had finished, he flew away. He had the chain in his right claw and the shoes in his left, and he flew right away to a mill, and the mill went click-clack, click-clack, click-clack. Inside the mill were 20 of the miller's men hewing a stone, and as they went hick-hack, 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 the mill went click-clack, click-clack, click-clack. The bird settled on a lime tree in front of the mill and sang, "My mother killed her little son." Then one of the men left off. "My father grieved when I was gone." 2 more men left off and listened. "My sister loved me best of all." Then 4 more left off. "She laid her kerchief over me and took my bones that they might lie." Now there were only 8 at work underneath, and now only 5 juniper tree. And now only one Kaiwit. Kaiwit, what a beautiful bird am I. Then he looked up, and the last one had left off work. Bird, he said, what a beautiful song that is you sing. Let me hear it too. Sing it again. Nay, answered the bird, I do not sing twice for nothing. Give me that millstone, and I will sing it again. If it belonged to me alone, said the man, you should have it. Yes, yes, said the others. If he will sing again, he can have it. The bird came down, and all the 20 millers set to and lifted up the stone with a beam. Then the bird put his head through the hole and took the stone round his neck like a collar and flew back with it to the tree and sang. My mother killed her little son. My father grieved when I was gone. My sister loved me best of all. She laid her kerchief over me and took my bones that they might lie underneath the juniper tree. Kaiwit, Kaiwit, what a beautiful bird am I. And when he had finished his song, he spread his wings, and with the chain in his right claw, the shoes in his left, and the millstone round his neck, he flew right away to his father's house. The father, the mother, and little Marlene were having their dinner. How light-hearted I feel, said the father, so pleased and cheerful. And I, said the mother, I feel so uneasy, as if a heavy thunderstorm were coming. But little Marlene sat and wept and wept. Then the bird came flying towards the house and settled on the roof. I too feel so happy, said the father, and how beautifully the sun shines. I feel just as if I were going to see an old friend again. Ah, said the wife, and I am so full of distress and uneasiness that my teeth chatter, and I feel as if there were a fire in my veins. And she tore open her dress, and all the while, little Marlene sat in the corner and wept, and the plate on her knees was wet with her tears. The bird now flew to the juniper tree and began singing. My mother killed her little son. The mother shut her eyes and her ears that she might see and hear nothing. But there was a roaring sound in her ears, like that of a violent storm, and in her eyes a burning and flashing like lightning. My father grieved when I was gone. Look, mother, said the man, at the beautiful bird that is singing so magnificently, and how warm and bright the sun is, and what a delicious scent of spice in the air. My sister loved me best of all. Then little Marlene laid her head down on her knees and sobbed. I must go outside and see the bird nearer, said the man. Ah, do not go, cried the wife. I feel as if the whole house were in flames. But the man went out and looked at the bird. She laid her kerchief over me and took my bones they might lie underneath the juniper tree. Kiwit, Kiwit, what a beautiful bird am I. With that, the bird let fall the gold chain, and it fell just round the man's neck, so that it fitted him exactly. He went inside and said, "See, what a splendid bird that is. He has given me this beautiful gold chain, and looks so beautiful himself." But the wife was in such fear and trouble that she fell on the floor, and her cap fell from her head. Then the bird began again. "My mother killed her little son. Ah, me," cried the wife, "if I were but 1,000 feet beneath the earth, that I might not hear that song. My father grieved when I was gone." Then the woman fell down again as if dead. My sister loved me best of all. "Well," said little Marlene, "I will go out too and see if the bird will give me anything." So she went out. She laid her kerchief over me and took my bones that they might lie. And he threw down the shoes to her underneath the juniper tree. Kiwit, Kiwit, what a beautiful bird am I. And she now felt quite happy and light-hearted. She put on the shoes and danced and jumped about in them. "I was so miserable," she said, when I came out. "But that has all passed away. That is indeed a splendid bird. And he has given me a pair of red shoes." The wife sprang up, with her hair standing out from her head like flames of fire. "Then I will go out too," she said, "and see if it will lighten my misery, for I feel as if the world were coming to an end." But as she crossed the threshold, crash! The bird threw the millstone down on her head, and she was crushed to death. The father and little Marlene heard the sound and ran out, but they only saw mist and flame and fire rising from the spot. And when these had passed, there stood the little brother, and he took the father and little Marlene by the hand. Then they all three rejoiced and went inside together and sat down to their dinners and ate. Historical and cultural context. In this section, we will explore the origins of the juniper tree, its publication history, and the historical and cultural influences that shape its narrative. We will examine the Christian and pre-Christian elements within the story, providing a deeper understanding of its themes and symbolism. Origins and publication. The Juniper Tree was first published by the Brothers Grimm in 1812 as part of their seminal anthology, Grimm's Fairy Tales, Kinder- und Hausmärchen. The tale, however, predates this publication and has roots in the oral traditions of German folklore. It was Johann Gustav Büsching who initially published a somewhat different version of the story in his collection Volkssagen, Märchen und Legenden earlier that same year. The Brothers Grimm adapted these oral recountings and fables, but their version was notably influenced by the painter Philipp Otto Runge's adaptation titled The Almond Tree. Christian elements. The narrative of the Juniper Tree is deeply intertwined with Christian symbolism. The couple's fervent prayers for a child highlight their devout nature, suggesting that their faith plays a crucial role in their lives. The story's timeline, beginning in winter and referencing the wish for a child as red as blood and as white as snow, evokes the imagery of Christmas and the miraculous birth of Christ. This association is further strengthened by the presence of the juniper tree, which in northern traditions could symbolize the burning of incense in religious ceremonies. The tale also draws parallels to the Eucharist, particularly through the gruesome act of the Father unknowingly consuming his Son's flesh. This act mirrors the Christian ritual of consuming the body and blood of Christ, adding a layer of sacramental horror to the narrative. The transformation and ultimate resurrection of the boy as a bird can be interpreted as a form of divine justice and redemption, echoing the Christian theme of resurrection and salvation. Pre-Christian and Germanic roots. While the Christian elements are prominent, the juniper tree also retains echoes of pre-Christian Germanic and Norse mythology. The juniper tree itself is a potent symbol in these traditions. Known in Old German as Wodenskirte, Woden's rod, it was associated with fertility and protection. The tree's presence in the story suggests ancient beliefs in its magical and protective powers. The winter solstice, which occurs around the time of the wife's wish, is a significant event in both pagan and Christian traditions. For the pagans, it marked the rebirth of the sun and the promise of new life, while in Christian tradition, it coincides with the celebration of Christmas. The juniper tree's association with the winter solstice and its protective qualities in folklore underscore its dual role as a symbol of both life and death. Blood-sealing pacts. The spilling of the wife's blood in the snow and her wish for a child can also be interpreted through the lens of blood-sealing pacts in Norse mythology. These pacts, known as blodband or blodbredrelag, were sacred agreements sealed with blood, symbolizing a deep and unbreakable bond. The wife's act of shedding blood can be seen as a binding pact with the divine or the natural world, invoking ancient practices to fulfill her deepest desire. Summary. The juniper tree is a rich tapestry of historical and cultural influences, blending Christian symbolism with ancient Germanic and Norse traditions. The tale's complex interplay of these elements creates a narrative that resonates with themes of faith, redemption, and the eternal struggle between good and evil. By understanding the historical and cultural context of the story, we gain deeper insights into its enduring power and significance. Character analysis. In this section, we will delve into the motivations, actions, and symbolic meanings of the main characters in the Juniper Tree. Understanding these characters will provide deeper insight into the story's themes and the dynamics that drive the narrative. The mother. The story opens with a wealthy and devout woman who longs desperately for a child. Her wish, made under the juniper tree, is granted in a manner that blends the sacred with the mystical. The act of cutting her finger and her blood falling onto the snow is rich with symbolic meaning. The colors red and white can be seen as representing life and purity, or even blood and divinity, intertwining Christian and pre-Christian symbolism. Her subsequent death after childbirth adds to her saintly image, making her a tragic yet holy figure. The juniper tree under which she is buried symbolizes life, protection, and rebirth, suggesting that her spirit continues to influence events from beyond the grave. The stepmother. The stepmother is a complex character driven by jealousy and fear. Her envy towards her stepson and her desire for her own daughter to inherit the family's wealth reveal deep-seated insecurities and a ruthless nature. The narrative suggests that her malevolence is amplified by an evil spirit, highlighting themes of possession and moral corruption. Her act of murder is not just a crime of passion, but a calculated move driven by both human and supernatural influences. The gruesome act of cooking her stepson and serving him as a meal to his father underscores her moral degradation. The stepmother's end, being crushed by a millstone, is a fittingly brutal form of divine retribution, aligning her fate with the biblical principle that those who cause the innocent to suffer will face the severest punishment. The father. The father in the juniper tree is portrayed as a passive figure, a common trope in many fairy tales, where male characters often embody authority but lack agency in domestic matters. His deep grief over the loss of his first wife and his subsequent unwitting consumption of his son's flesh paints him as both tragic and pitiable. His passivity and ignorance, especially in the gruesome meal scene, highlight his vulnerability and the stark contrast between his paternal love and the stepmother's evil. Historically, his role reflects the limited involvement of men in household affairs and child-rearing during the time the tale was conceived. The sun and the bird. The sun, who is described as being as white as snow and as red as blood, represents purity and the fulfillment of a divine wish. His tragic murder and subsequent transformation into a bird are central to the narrative's exploration of justice and resurrection. The bird, embodying the boy's spirit, becomes a vehicle for divine retribution and moral reckoning. The bird's song reveals the truth of the boy's murder, compelling the community to confront the evil act. The gifts the bird receives, a gold chain, red shoes, and a millstone, each symbolize aspects of the justice being served. The transformation back to his human form after the stepmother's death signifies the restoration of order and the triumph of good over evil. Marlinchen, the sister. Marlinchen, or Marlene, is portrayed as the innocent and pure-hearted sister who unwittingly becomes complicit in her brother's death due to her mother's manipulation. Her genuine grief and act of collecting her brother's bones to bury under the juniper tree highlight her deep love and loyalty. This act, which brings about the bird's miraculous transformation, underscores her role as a catalyst for redemption and justice. The red shoes she receives from the bird symbolize freedom and perhaps her own salvation from the taint of her mother's sin. Throughout the story, Marlinchen represents innocence and the hope for eventual redemption and justice. Symbolism and themes. In this section, we will explore the rich symbolism and recurring themes in the juniper tree. The story is filled with layers of meaning that intertwine Christian motifs with ancient folklore, creating a complex narrative that resonates on multiple levels. Blood and snow. The imagery of blood on snow is one of the most striking symbols in the story. The mother's wish for a child, as white as snow and as red as blood, combines elements of purity and vitality. Blood, a symbol of life and death, represents the deep desires and sacrifices of the mother. The contrast with the snow, which signifies purity and innocence, emphasizes the miraculous nature of the child's conception and the intertwining of life and death from the very beginning. The juniper tree. The juniper tree itself is a powerful symbol of life, death, and rebirth. In both Christian and pre-Christian traditions, the juniper tree is associated with protection and purification. The mother's burial under the juniper tree and the subsequent magical events suggest the tree's role as a guardian and a portal between the worlds of the living and the dead. In ancient Germanic mythology, juniper was connected to Woden, Odin, and believed to have protective qualities. The tree's significance is further enhanced by its connection to fertility and its use in religious ceremonies as a substitute for incense. food, and cannibalism. The act of cannibalism, where the father unknowingly eats his son's flesh, is one of the most shocking elements of the story. This gruesome detail underscores the theme of transformation and the blurred line between life and death. It also serves as a dark parody of the Eucharist, where the consumption of the body and blood has sacred connotations. Here, it becomes an act of unwitting desecration, highlighting the father's ignorance and the stepmother's evil. Reincarnation and transformation. The son's transformation into a bird represents the themes of reincarnation and resurrection. The bird's emergence from the juniper tree, accompanied by fire and mist, symbolizes purification and divine intervention. The bird's song, which recounts the story of the boy's murder, serves as a catalyst for justice and retribution. The final transformation back to human form signifies the restoration of natural order and the triumph of good over evil. The song and the number 9. The bird sings its song 9 times, a number rich with symbolic meaning. In Christian numerology, 9 is often associated with completeness and divine judgment, as it is 3 times 3, emphasizing the Holy Trinity. It can also symbolize the 9 levels of hell from Dante's Inferno, suggesting a connection to ultimate punishment and retribution. Each repetition of the song peels back a layer of deceit and reveals the truth, leading to the stepmother's eventual downfall. The number 9 also resonates with themes of transformation and purification, as it often signifies the end of a cycle and the beginning of a new one. Christian symbolism. Christian motifs are woven throughout the narrative. The juniper tree's association with Christmas and the miraculous birth of the child ties the story to themes of divine grace and redemption. The act of cannibalism, while horrific, parallels the sacramental consumption of Christ's body and blood, adding a layer of sacrilege and horror. The bird's role as a messenger of divine justice and the ultimate resurrection of the boy reinforce the themes of sin, punishment, and redemption. Cycles of grief and healing. The story explores the cyclical nature of grief and healing. The mother's initial grief and joy at the birth of her son, followed by her death, set the stage for a narrative of loss and recovery. Marlinchian's sorrow and her act of burying her brother's bones under the juniper tree lead to a miraculous transformation that brings healing and justice. The cycles of the seasons, particularly the winter setting of the story's beginning, emphasize the themes of death and rebirth. Psychological and moral interpretations. In this section, we will delve into the psychological and moral dimensions of the Juniper Tree. This analysis will explore the underlying human emotions, ethical dilemmas, and moral lessons that the tale conveys. Evil and possession. The stepmother's character is a study in the psychological transformation from envy to outright malevolence. Her initial jealousy of her stepson evolves into a destructive obsession. The narrative suggests that she is influenced by an evil spirit, emphasizing the theme of possession and the corrupting power of unchecked emotions. This portrayal highlights the psychological depth of her character, suggesting that her actions are driven not only by personal ambition, but also by an external malevolent force. The stepmother's eventual fate, being crushed by a millstone, serves as a moral lesson about the consequences of allowing evil to take root within oneself. Child abuse and family dynamics. The story vividly depicts the psychological trauma of child abuse. The stepmother's relentless cruelty towards her stepson reflects the destructive impact of jealousy and favoritism within a family. Her manipulation of Marlinchen, forcing her to believe she is responsible for her brother's death, adds another layer of psychological horror. This dynamic illustrates how abusers can distort reality and manipulate their victims' perceptions, creating a cycle of guilt and fear. The father's passive role further complicates the family dynamics, showing how inaction and ignorance can perpetuate abuse. Justice and redemption. Justice and redemption are central themes in the Juniper Tree. The bird, embodying the spirit of the murdered boy, becomes an agent of divine retribution. By revealing the truth through his song, he ensures that justice is served. The gifts he receives symbolize different forms of justice. The gold chain represents the restoration of honor and recognition. The red shoes signify innocence and freedom, and the millstone embodies the harsh punishment of the guilty. Marlinchen's ultimate redemption, signified by the bird's gifts, underscores the moral that innocence and goodness will eventually be rewarded. Grief and healing. The story explores the psychological processes of grief and healing. The mother's death at the birth of her long-desired child sets a tone of sorrow and loss. Marlinchen's grief over her brother's death and her act of burying his bones reflect her deep emotional turmoil and longing for closure. The miraculous transformation of the bird and the final reunion of the family suggest that healing is possible through acts of love and remembrance. The narrative implies that true healing involves acknowledging and confronting the past, allowing the wounds to be transformed into a source of strength and renewal. The devil and temptation. The stepmother's actions can be seen as an allegory for the devil's influence and the power of temptation. Her offer of an apple to the boy, reminiscent of the biblical story of Adam and Eve, symbolizes the introduction of sin and corruption. The repeated emphasis on her being driven by an evil spirit highlights the struggle between good and evil within the human soul. This portrayal serves as a moral warning about the dangers of succumbing to dark impulses and the destructive consequences that follow. Psychological trauma. The tale also delves into the long-term effects of psychological trauma. Marlinchian's persistent sorrow and the stepmother's attempts to manipulate her mind reflect the deep scars left by abusive relationships. The story illustrates how trauma can distort reality and impact the mental health of the victims, causing lasting emotional pain. However, it also offers a narrative of hope and recovery, suggesting that through acts of love, remembrance, and justice, it is possible to overcome even the deepest psychological wounds. Moral lessons. The Juniper Tree imparts several moral lessons. The consequences of envy and greed. The stepmother's downfall is a direct result of her envy and greed, serving as a cautionary tale about the destructive power of these emotions. The importance of truth and justice. The bird's song, which reveals the truth and ensures justice, underscores the value of honesty and the inevitability of moral reckoning. Redemption through innocence and love. Marlinchian's actions, driven by love and innocence, ultimately lead to her redemption, highlighting the power of purity and goodness in overcoming evil. Comparative analysis. In this section, we will compare the Juniper Tree with other tales and explore its influence on later works. This analysis will highlight similarities and differences in themes, motifs, and narrative structures, providing a broader context for understanding the unique elements of this fairy tale. Similar tales and variants. Hansel and Gretel. Themes. Both the Juniper Tree and Hansel and Gretel explore themes of child abuse, cannibalism, and survival. In Hansel and Gretel, the children are abandoned by their parents and face the threat of being eaten by a witch. Similarly, the Juniper Tree features a stepmother who kills and cooks her stepson. Family dynamics. Both tales depict dysfunctional family dynamics, with evil stepmothers playing central roles in the children's suffering. The father's passive role in both stories underscores a common motif in fairy tales, where paternal figures are either absent or ineffectual. Redemption and justice. In both stories, the children ultimately triumph over their abusers, symbolizing the triumph of innocence and goodness over evil. The Rose Tree. Plot similarities. The Rose Tree is an English fairy tale that closely mirrors the Juniper Tree, but reverses the sexes of the children. In The Rose Tree, a wicked stepmother kills her stepdaughter and buries her bones, from which a rose tree grows. The girl's spirit, in the form of a bird, avenges her death by dropping a millstone on the stepmother. Motifs. Both stories use the motif of a tree growing from the remains of the murdered child, symbolizing life, death, and rebirth. The bird's song revealing the truth and seeking justice is a common element in both tales. Conclusion. The Juniper Tree stands as one of the most profound and complex tales in the Brothers Grimm collection. Its narrative weaves together elements of horror, magic, and deep moral lessons, making it a compelling story for adult audiences. Throughout this analysis, we have explored the rich tapestry of themes, symbolism, and character dynamics that make this fairy tale a timeless piece of folklore. The story begins with the poignant wish of a mother and the miraculous birth of her child, setting the stage for a narrative steeped in both Christian allegory and pagan imagery. The Juniper Tree, a central symbol in the tale, represents life, death, and rebirth, serving as a guardian and a portal between worlds. This duality reflects the blend of Christian and pre-Christian elements that permeate the story. The characters in the Juniper Tree are richly drawn and psychologically complex. The stepmother's transformation from jealousy to malevolence, driven by an evil spirit, highlights the destructive power of unchecked emotions. The father's passive role underscores themes of ignorance and complicity, while Marlingen's innocence and ultimate redemption symbolize the triumph of purity and love over evil. The symbolism of blood and snow, the Juniper Tree, and the bird song all contribute to the tale's exploration of profound themes such as justice, redemption, and the cycles of grief and healing. The bird song, repeated 9 times, emphasizes themes of divine judgment and the completeness of moral reckoning. The Juniper Tree also delves into psychological and moral dimensions, illustrating the impact of child abuse, the struggle for justice, and the possibility of redemption. The tale's exploration of possession, temptation, and the devil's influence adds a layer of moral complexity, serving as a cautionary tale about the dangers of succumbing to dark impulses. Comparative analysis with other tales, such as Hansel and Gretel and the Rose Tree, reveals common motifs and themes, while also highlighting the unique elements of the Juniper Tree. The tale's influence on later works, including modern adaptations in literature, opera, and film, underscores its enduring relevance and impact In conclusion, the Juniper Tree is a rich and multifaceted fairy tale that continues to captivate and intrigue audiences. Its blend of horror, magic, and deep moral lessons offers a timeless reflection on the complexities of human nature and the eternal struggle between good and evil. As we have journeyed through the layers of this tale, we are reminded of the power of folklore to illuminate the darkest corners of the human psyche and to offer insights into the moral fabric of our lives. Moral. In the Juniper Tree, we encounter the darkest aspects of human nature: envy, abuse, and violence. These themes, while harrowing, also remind us of the importance of love, justice, and redemption. As we reflect on this tale, we can draw important lessons that resonate in our lives today. One moral we can draw is the crucial importance of being truly free from manipulation, abuse, and violence. These destructive forces can deeply impact our mental health and well-being. If you or someone you know is suffering from any form of abuse or mental health issues, it is essential to seek help and support. This help can come from various sources: therapists and counselors, professionals who can provide guidance and support in dealing with emotional and psychological trauma. Family members, trusted family members who offer love, understanding, and a safe space to share your burdens. Friends, close friends who listen and support you through difficult times. Support groups, communities of people who have experienced similar challenges and can offer empathy and advice. Hotlines and helplines. Immediate assistance from professionals who can guide you to the right resources. Remember, nobody should be left alone, either as a victim of abuse or as someone struggling with mental health problems. It is vital not to ignore signs within yourself that indicate the need for help. Similarly, do not look away if others around you are affected. We all have a role in supporting one another and fostering a community where everyone feels safe and valued. As we conclude this journey through the Juniper Tree, let us hold on to positive thoughts. Let us all be reminded to choose the rightful way of being faithful and honest to ourselves and to others. Life has no shortcuts, and problems, especially within the family, need to be addressed and resolved with care and integrity. Whether within the family or with external help, it is important to confront and heal from these challenges. May this story inspire you to seek and offer support, to cherish honesty and kindness, and to strive for a life filled with love and understanding. As you drift into sleep, let these positive thoughts bring you comfort and peace. Together, we we can create a world where everyone feels safe, heard, and loved.